want to show you a few examples of resumes and cover letters and discuss the things that are good about each and the things that could be improved so that you feel comfortable writing your resume and cover letter for your job search. So here's a sample cover letter. It has a lot right with it. It's in standard business letter format, which is how you're going to do it if you're giving your cover letter in person or attaching it as a PDF to an application. Of course, if you're doing your cover letter as an email, the content's the same. The layout is just a little different. So there's a lot that's good about this. It shows who's sending it. It has the date. It has a proper title. It's addressed to someone. Street address isn't necessary unless you're actually mailing it. And the greeting is nice and professional. It's the right length, and it has a space for a signature. Basically, there's a couple of things that I think could improve this cover letter. Here's the biggest issue right here. In this paragraph, the writer basically downplays what they bring, focusing on the negative. I think in your cover letter, you want to focus on the positive. While you may be new to the profession, maybe a little light on experience, you can still talk about what makes you a good candidate, why you like the company, why you want to be in medical assisting, how excited you are to begin your professional career. Any of those things are fine. I just wouldn't point out the negatives in a cover letter. I also would be careful to use, kind of professional level writing. Something about that, I passed my certification exam right there sounds a little unprofessional. And I really like this. And that's because it shows that the writer did some homework about the organization. This is clearly not a form letter, and that's what we want. You don't want to use a form letter where you just swap out the names of the organizations and the people you're sending it to. And let's talk about this, the closing. I will call you next week to discuss the possibility of an interview. Is that okay? Of course it is, but only if it's what you could actually do and do well. So there's no obligation to commit to doing something that you don't want to do. Now, following up is something you want to do. So all I'm saying is you don't have to commit to what you're going to do to follow up in the cover letter if that makes you uncomfortable. So that's what I think is pretty okay about this cover letter and what could be improved. Now here's the resume that goes with the cover letter that you just saw. And basically, it looks fine. It does look a little sparse though, doesn't it? So while you don't want the font to be gargantuan, you do want to try to fill the page pretty well, but you'd rather fill it with good content, not just with a larger font. The objective here at the top is helpful, especially if you have a feeling for what sort of setting you want to be a medical assistant in, and your education is always going to go next. Now, if you have medical assisting certification, which I hope all of you will do, you would also put that here, and you would just make this education certification, and you can list that certification even before you have it simply by saying certified medical assistant anticipated August 2017 or whatever it is. Now next is the experience. And one of the things that's interesting here is that experience is intermixed. And what happens is because this person has had more experience outside of medical assisting than in, the balance is wrong. So one of the things that would make this resume stronger is the addition of any clinical experiences that this person had during their degree program. You should definitely put clinical placements on here. You also could downplay the unrelated things. So in other words, maybe I just don't want to say as much about what I'm doing at the grocery store as I'm saying about what I did as a volunteer in a healthcare setting. So is this bad? No, it's just a little sparse in spite of how nicely laid out it is. Now here's another cover letter, and you can immediately see the difference between this one and the first one we looked at. It's not really personally addressed. It doesn't include the organization name. And interestingly enough, it really does not seem to be personalized at all. It seems like you could send this exact same letter to every employer, and that just really doesn't fly. And it also is a little bit unprofessional in its wording. This content here is good. It says, it summarizes what the person's degree is and what their plans are. It summarizes what was done in another position, probably a clinical. I would just say this, but be careful not to just narrate the resume on the cover letter. That's kind of a waste of space. But because this isn't personalized, this person isn't addressing why they want to work for the organization they're applying to. You can't even tell what organization that is, nor are they addressing why they're interested in medical assisting. The reasons you want a job are going to be very personal, but that's what you address in a cover letter, and this is just too generic. And typos, a big problem. Typos scream inattention to detail. This also is too generic. I have researched your organization online and am impressed by the quality of service you provide to your patients. Well, there's nothing about that that's actually believable just because it's really not personalized. So this cover letter is kind of weak because it's too generic and it's not personalized for the organization. Now here's the resume that goes with the cover letter we just saw. First of all, let me say that a two-page resume is just fine, provided that the information is relevant and helpful. Ironically, including everything is not necessarily the best strategy. If what you're including isn't really related to the position you're seeking, then it's a waste of space. But when it is, as it is here, it's not a problem to have a two-page resume. Now you'll see there's no objective. That's okay. You don't have to have an objective. It's an optional thing. You'll see that there's a number of educational experiences listed here. And while this is always discretionary, I would say don't list high school and don't list things that didn't lead to some sort of degree or certification unless there's some really important reason why you would want to do that. I think it's fine to just list what matters, not that you went here and then you transferred those credits over here, but you didn't finish there, and then you went over here to Bay State College. By the way, I prefer the finish date instead of the range of dates that you attended. That's just not helpful. Just tell me when you finished. So now this individual has some related experience. As you can see, it's listed here, and that's a good thing. I don't really like this formatting. It's hard to read. I would actually use bullet points in Microsoft Word, and if you don't know how to do that, ask a professor. We can definitely coach you with that. But this person is describing the things they did, and the great thing about that description is it's giving this person a lot of ways to use the terms that relate to being a medical assistant. Biopsy, wound care. Look at all these technical terms. But again, we've got some irregular formatting here. And so don't let the format get in the way. And that's what's happening on this resume. The format is getting in the way of what's otherwise really good content. Now look over here. We've got this list of medical skills. If you're light on experience, you're moving into your first medical assisting job, I think you need this section. You need to list procedures and knowledge that you gained in your coursework because it gives you a chance to talk like a medical assistant. So list the things that you know about or know how to do, and then repeat them in what you're describing you did where it's possible. But this is an okay resume, just a little formatting issue that could definitely be fixed. Here's a resume and cover letter, and based on everything that we've talked about so far, I think you can pretty much tell what's wrong with this. The cover letter is very generic. It's not explicit. It doesn't persuade anyone that this individual really wants a medical assisting job. And over here, the format again is really getting in the way. There's some good content here, but it's just not organized in a way that's helpful. And everything is listed. So, for example, I don't really care that this person's worked at Boulevard Pizza or Dunkin' Donuts. Yes, it shows they have good work ethic, but I'm hiring a medical assistant, so don't waste my time telling me about that kind of previous work experience at the expense of being able to tell me something about the qualifications for being a medical assistant. However, if you are bilingual to any extent, we need to figure out a way to get that on the resume because that's pretty much universally valued by employers. Now, here's a resume and cover letter that are in really good shape. Nothing is ever going to be perfect, but I like these a lot. Let's look at the cover letter first. That cover letter is deep and thorough. You'll see from my resume that I've had a healthcare experience in multiple settings. Every position that I have held has given me an opportunity to build my understanding of and ability to work with a diverse client base. So this person is referring to the resume without narrating it, but is really saying, look, here's what I've learned in my experiences. You're never going to pick this up just from reading the resume. So let me just explain to you how good I am at working with diverse populations and why I'm attracted to you because it's your goal to give the best possible service and value diversity among your clients. And again, more about why this individual wants to work at this organization. This is nothing like a form letter. Nobody but Boston's Best Clinic could get this cover letter. It is that tailored, and that is wonderful. Now let's come over here to the resume. Now this person really doesn't have a lot of related experience outside of the clinical and working as a personal care attendant for a while prior to enrolling in school. So their education and certifications are listed up here. And again, those go near the top on your resume as well. Here's the skills list, like I suggested you include. Now again, only include those things that you actually know about, can actually do, and frankly might actually like to do on the job. There's no point in blurting out words and phrases and keywords if you really don't know the content area all that well, or you really don't want to do that in the job. But this really goes a long way toward establishing her qualifications. And then she gives detail about her medical assistant clinical experience. She gives detail about her work as a direct care professional because it's somewhat related. But look what she's done down here. She's had a couple of other really unrelated jobs, and she just wants the reader to know that she's a hard worker and she knows what it's like to hold down a job, show up on time, be a good employee. So she just lists her cashiering job. And isn't this interesting? She was a volunteer firefighter. So you can have a section like this of additional experience where you would put things that maybe aren't as relevant, but are just kind of interesting or fill in the blanks or that you want your reader to know. I'd suggest that you study these examples as you're creating your own resume and cover letter. Talk to your professors and career services. We're happy to provide you with a resume review. And best of luck in your search.